Hi, me again. Yes, in person, but only for a little bit of time. This is the video that I promised about ordinary magic. Yes, the cards are here. Well, technically, my deck of cards is here. All the rest is still coming over on a boat from China. Hopefully, they'll be here in the middle of February and I can start getting them out to people. I've started putting stuff on my website, so they will be available for pre-order hopefully next week. I'll finish getting all that set up. But for now, this video is about how we got here. All the sort of iterations, decisions, color choices, all the things that I sort of got through to create this, and a little bit of a, I guess, look into my brain, which can be a little bit scary. But I guess in case you're interested in how the sausage is made, but also if this is something you might want to do for yourself to give you a bit of an idea about how this all works. This was really a journey that started for me in around about the middle of 2023 as drawing jars of things, and as of last week is now a thing. It's a real thing that lives in the world that I can hold in my hands, and it's so much prettier than I could have hoped for, and I'm very happy with it. So let's get stuck in. Okay, so how did this come to be? Well, it really started with literally just drawing jars. I was referring to these as jars of things. So part of my postcard sort of practice that I was doing, you'll see, I came up with the title Ordinary Magic early, but still second guessed it. I started drawing jars of things, and jars are fun because they come in all sorts of different shapes and you can put anything in them. And I sort of had the idea, obviously, with the Ordinary Magic that, you know, these things that are put in these jars could be something a little bit different, could be something that a little bit sort of witchy vibe, could basically be like part of a witch's cupboard. But I was just playing with drawing jars. I've drawn these flowers in jars quite a bit. And like I said, I was enjoying the idea that, you know, capturing different things like, different sort of ideas, different strengths, different weaknesses, courage, freedom, all of these little bits and pieces. So this was my bullet journal theme for October 2023. And I'd already started having a little bit of a thought about, could I expand this? Could I do a little bit more with it? What could I do? And I decided it was going to be part of my 2024 desk calendar. Now, initially, I'd actually thought about doing it as my entire calendar, but what I decided was that it would be February. So February had jars of things, and this was the first time that I drew them digitally and went, you know, this could really work as an idea. I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed exploring that little bit of an idea. I expanded on them and created like a little print that, again, is called Ordinary Magic. So I've obviously got that idea stuck in my head a bit. So out of that, then I started exploring with it a little bit more. Like I said, you know, I sort of had thought about making it my calendar, but I thought I could make it into a card deck. And what would that look like? What would that be, and how would that work? And so I had to sit down and think about, well, you know, what are all the words that I could possibly use? Now, this was actually done a little bit after the initial plan, so we'll go to that next. The next thing was then I did a Domestica course, because why not? And it was about creating a card deck. Now, she was creating a tarot card deck, and that's fine, but I wanted to do oracle cards instead. And as you can see here, oracle cards, they're effectively like a daily deck. They can be done weekly if you wish, to help direct your intention of the day or for the day. They can be used to also set broader intentions, goals, all of those sorts of things. And really for me, the way that I've used them in the past is just as a stimulus, to make you think about something in a different way. Sort of think about a challenge that you're having or something like that, and, cut a card and see what comes up. So, if you're struggling with something and you cut a courageous card, then it's like, okay, so what would it look like if I was being courageous here? And so it helps you sort of think through issues without being stuck in your own mindset and your own thoughts about how you feel about it, sort of just getting a little bit of external stimulus. So this came from the course, and this then became the idea because I was thinking to myself, this would be a great design challenge. There are a few different ways, I was thinking to what I could put in there, how I could show them, how I could develop all of this. But that's the whole thing. This would become a bit of a design challenge because I'd have to go through and think not only what are the words that I would put on the card, but then what would the cards look like, and would there be themes? The faces would have to have one look, the backs would have to have another look, I'd have to design a box, I'd have to do all of these sorts of things. So, it was a nice project, and I enjoy creative projects. So, this was the first sort of cut of all the words I thought I might use. You'll see they're sort of broken into categories. And initially I thought about them in relation to, like internally, like your heart, your brain, like money, and who you are, like your spirit or that sort of thing. But I was going through and trying to think of how would they all relate to each other, came up with a heap of words and then went, all right, let's just explore it a little bit more then. So out of that list, I came up with some more words. So came up with, I guess, a refined list of words, I should say, and what sort of thing might symbolise that. So what would go in the jar? This was very much a concept of having jars and what would go in the jar, and then what are some of the words I might put around it for people to consider or explore. So, I started going through and thinking about all of that. And this is like the original cut. So these are the original thought processes. Some of the ideas stuck, some of them you can clearly follow it straight through to the final card. Others have changed quite a bit. Some words got joined together. I found some better ways of exploring some of the ideas and different symbols that I came up with as I went through and did that. So because it was in a book, I was like, that's a lot and I can't really carry that around with me, so I put it in a different book. And look, this is part of the process of creating for me, of creating in a space and then moving it to another space to think about it a bit differently. And there are all sorts of iterations. This was always going to have a lot of iterations. So I bought some of these little A5 little books for a couple of the creative projects I was doing at the time. And this is obviously my one for Oracle cards. You'll see I caught a little bit on the name and went, is that the best name for it? And you'll see that, there are a number of times I went back and forth on that. I was thinking about what sort of design elements might go on the cards, what might I have, and then went through with the words and descriptions and sort of brought it down into something that was a little bit easier for me to flip through and have a look at. So you'll see here we've got the word, we've got the elements that I might put in here, a little bit of a descriptor, and then a couple of additional words that sort of amplify the main word, or, a synonyms sort of the main word, or other characteristics that you might consider. And then you can see just in here that I've got air, earth, I also have water and fire, because that was my original thought. My original thought was that I would use those categories. And so I went through, filled it all out in here, and came up with these words. So the other thing that I did in here, and this wasn't necessarily straight away, but the other thing that I did do in this little book was capture stuff around, this is who I use, WJPC printing. This was from the quote that I got from them initially. All these prices are in US dollars. So it's like, God damn it. Some of them I got quoted at 200 decks of cards and 500 decks of cards. And it is significantly cheaper per deck to do 500. And I really sort of struggled with the decision making about doing that. In the end, I decided to go with 200 because I was just not overly confident that I could sell 500 decks of cards. And as much as I wanted to put this into the world and make it a thing, I also didn't want to have hundreds of decks of cards left in my life. And, I don't require me to make a huge profit from any of these things. Like I will never get back the money that it would have cost me in time to create this. I will never get that back. But I would like to cover my costs, ideally. This is where we are. I thought about doing a sticker sheet. I am doing one, but I'm doing a much smaller one. And that'll be available on my website to buy as well. And then I did think about doing crowdfunding. I thought about this for quite a while in the process. And I am getting enamel badges done. So I'm getting a limited run of 75 of those. This is just exploring thoughts. So, because I did produce a little booklet that's in there about how to use them, group them together into the 4 categories, because that's what I was thinking at the time. And these are basically notes from last August of going through and saying, okay, if I were to do this, what would I do? What would I include on Kickstarter? So at that point in time, I came up with a design that was really simple about, the 4 elements. And you can see here, I started playing around with a couple of ideas for it. And then it got put aside for quite a while. All of this was done in early 2024, and then it got put aside. So I didn't really sort of pick everything back up properly until 2025, until sort of early 2025, I was starting to have a little bit of a think about it. And what I did was I went through and sort of grabbed some of these words and just went through the dictionary and found, what's the meaning of them, so that when I was ready to explore the ideas again, I just had some other words as well as my original thoughts, some actual meanings. Because who doesn't love a card sorting activity? Card sorting is great fun. So these took it out of the book and allowed me to see everything together on a table. I went through and did that, and then we got to the point of actually creating. Here you can see, took that original idea of a jar with some little design elements around it, played with some different ideas and started exploring, adding some different things in there as well, because this was the thing. It felt like it wasn't enough. I was going through and looking at stuff and decided that, I wanted to add some more to it. And what would that look like? What would more look like? How would that come across? What would that be? And so, playing with colour ideas, playing with all of that sort of stuff. And, I started getting some solid structure in place. I decided at that point that I wanted to go back to that idea from my bullet journal of it being like a cupboard, and being, a cupboard of things that you could get access to help you out and support you, to make you think differently, to help even give you some of these characteristics. And so that's what I did, and played around with that. And then it all started getting a little bit much. I started getting sort of a bit confused with it. And this is where the next part of the process comes in for me, because this is the point that I'm like, okay, I now need to think about putting it into a different structure, into a different system, because now I need to really be able to properly analyse it and look at, where things are, where they aren't, and, whether I've got the right information. And also putting everything in here lets me spell check it, because this is all in Word, and feel a little bit more comfortable. So by this point in time, I'd actually decided I was definitely going to have 42 cards, because 42 is the meaning of life, according to Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I thought that was nice. So, originally I'd had 40. I got up to 42. I thought, well, if I'm having 4 categories, so if I was going to do the, air, water, earth and fire, then I needed to basically, get it to a number that was divisible by 4, so it was even. I thought of going and, doing it aligned to what I did with my year of TED. I'll talk about that in a second. But what I've ended up with was 6 categories. So, I have a category for doing, I have a category for my head, heart, being, so sort of like a little bit of spirit. So instinct, so gut, and just external, so those external factors that might have an influence. And then 6 categories, I could have 7 in each category. It was nice and even, it was 42, and that was all good. So you'll see here, I sort of got it all out into tables and then started going through and thinking, okay, the design had evolved that I wanted to have more than one thing, that it was going to be like a cupboard. And I thought, well, at the most, I'll have like 3 things, and it'd be nice to have 3 things for each. So you see like all the different words and everything. This is hours and hours and hours. This is days of research, of, going into Google and saying, hey, what is a way that we symbolise truth or knowledge? What is a way that we symbolise solitude? What is a way that we symbolise... And so some of these I'd already done and I'd already had a little bit of a look into, but since I'm now looking for 3 things for each word or collection of words or meaning, then I had to go through and do more. And this is just one of many sheets that has actually survived being culled off my desk, about just little things that I was drawing as I was going through and thinking about that. And yeah, it continued to evolve. So this is close to the end of the process. You'll see that I'm still moving some things around and seeing where there's like duplication of some areas. So I tried to remove a lot of that. And you'll notice here that these are highlighted differently. So what I thought about was basically going back to, like I said, the analogy that I had from my year of TED, which was the Wizard of Oz. So that concept was I wanted to develop a greater understanding of myself, get a brain. I wanted to be kinder to myself and others, get a heart. I wanted to basically have the courage to create the life that I wanted to create for myself. So courage. And then the last one was that I wanted to return home. So what Dorothy wanted, except I took that as returning back to the authentic me that I had to sort of uncover, because, we spend so much time creating this persona to basically keep everybody happy, and you sometimes can lose sight of who you are. So I thought about going into those 4 categories, and then for the 2 additional ones, we would have Glinda and we would have Toto. So I played around with that idea for a little bit and then decided against it. Decided, nope, we're just going to stick with the 6 categories that we had. But this is a little bit of that back and forth, because, that's what happens in this process. You end up with a lot of back and forth. Should I do this? Should I do that? How will this work? Now, this is basically then the draft, the closest to sort of how it ended up. So again, printing everything out so that I can have a look at the design elements and make sure that everything's looking right in relation to the font, in relation to then pulling apart the words and everything on here as well. Pulling apart, having a look at the design and seeing whether there are shadows missing, or, whether I'd want to actually switch colours around or what I wanted to do with it. And it's really important, well, for me, and I think for a lot of people who create, to get things off screens, because there's just a limitation on the screen of looking at something on the screen and trying to read it and process it. Again, having a different way of looking at it, going through and saying, okay, so, does this actually read well? Does this work? I could do this and basically look at each of them as separate things and go, okay, how does that work? How does that look? What might I want to do to it? And so on and so forth. So, you can see lots of edits and changes and everything else. You'll see in here, and now I've got to go back and find it. I have a few words that are quite long words that I decided, most of them I kept the same except breakthrough. Breakthrough was all getting too difficult, so I ended up changing that because, I like that as the keyword, but it just got a little bit much. And some of them were a little bit short, and I thought, well, do I change it to something else? And yeah, that was a bit of that playing in that process. So all the iterations going back through, I decided I would change the font because I wasn't comfortable with that font. It all looked a little bit, I don't know, it was a little bit messy. It was a little bit, I don't know. But yeah, this is sort of closer to where it all really ended up. I decided I would put a border on it and, go through, like I said, change the fonts, changed a few of the colours, changed a few of the words in order to make them fit in a little bit more comfortably, change a few of the design elements and everything else in there as well. And, that's basically the process of how it sort of came together and how everything happened. Okay. So once all the design decisions are made and everything else is done, then you have to make all the decisions about how you want your cards to look and what that's going to be. And I had got a sample pack of cards ages ago to help pick what paper and what finish and everything else. So I decided on a 2-piece box. It's got a thumb cut to make it easier to come out. I embossed, so gold foiled the name on the box just to make it look a little bit special and a little bit different. They did a lovely job. The box feels really substantial, which I'm very happy with. It is matte laminated, so it reduces, fingerprints and marks sort of being on it. We'll have a look at the cards in a second. I did do a little instruction booklet. I had thought about doing this as a stapled booklet, but when I sort of pulled it all together, I'm like, there's really not that much information, really. So, I could just do it as a little concertina. So I did that. Now, I'll point out. Okay, this is where, the card company did a fantastic job. So see this border here, it's sort of like a goldenrod colour. That's sort of what the brown is. That was originally going to be on the cards and on the box. And when we got to sort of printing and proofing and doing all that sort of stuff, that colour was creating like the slightest little shadow top and bottom on the cards as it was, as they did the proof sheets. And we decided that was unacceptable. So they went through, and the day that I was sort of getting everything proofed and printed and everything, they, spent hours trying to work out what to do, how to print differently, use different machines, all those things. And they eventually came back and said, look, we can reduce it, but there's still like a tiny little bit of a shadow. And this is where I will say, if you create things, if you come up with things that you love and you You have designs. Don't wed yourself to something that doesn't need to be wedded to. I should have just turned around ages before and said, look, just take the border off. It's fine. It doesn't need the border. It's perfectly okay. But, you come up with design decisions and all these things feel really important, and then they're not. So the cards are UV laminated. They are a 350 GSM art paper. I did, of course, gild the edges gold as well. And they came out really, they've, got a nice, I did look at doing black core. It was just that bit more expensive. And I went, nah. The 350 GSM cards that I got in the sample kits felt fine. So this is the design, and you'll see, you would have seen earlier, the main word, then the next 3 words, the design elements, the shelf, because it's in a cupboard, the little vial that is, which category it is, and then the descriptor for what it is. And you'll see, the colours came out gorgeous. I'm so incredibly happy with how it all came out. I can't even begin to tell you. I did have someone ask me why I went for a tarot card size and not an oracle card size, because oracle cards are about, that much wider and a little bit higher, and mainly because I have an oracle card deck and I find the cards don't sit really comfortably in my hand. They're a little bit big, so they're a little bit difficult to shuffle, and it means that I don't hold on to them, I don't use them. And a tarot card, the deck just feels like it fits better in my hand, it shuffles better, and so that was the choice that I made. It was to go for this size instead of the oracle size. So the idea is you basically go through and think of a part of your life, or, just think of your life in general, think of a challenge you might be facing. You shuffle the cards, cut them, sit the cut deck off to the side, and then turn the card over. And so the card that I have for you today is comfort. Solace, soothing, relaxing. Dealing with the world is often complex, sometimes difficult, and always tiring. It's time to look for opportunities for self-care, support, and recovery. So this is your card today. Have a think about how that might apply to your life. And that's really just it. It's like, okay, so if you were thinking about career and you sit there doing this and going, oh, okay, maybe I'm not actually taking enough time. Maybe I'm actually feeling more stressed out about a situation that's occurring because I'm not actually taking time to self-soothe. I'm not taking time to actually relax. And so it's a prompt. That's all it is. It's a prompt to consider something that maybe you weren't considering. So these are the cards. They will be available on my website next week for pre-order, but they will probably be arriving at my house in mid-February. That's sort of what we're thinking at the moment is the likely time frame. I am going to actually sort out all the stuff around tariffs. So people in the US will be able to order these, but that probably won't be until March because, I have to go through and do a couple of things. And I want to do that in slightly slower time when my brain is a little bit more focused, because I want to really understand the process, both from my website and from Australia Post and everything else. So that'll be happening then, but it will be happening. In the meantime, thank you for being here. I'm extremely excited that these are a thing that exists in the world now. That is, it's amazing. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. If this is something you sort of want to do for yourself at some point in time, I'm happy to answer questions. I think I've covered pretty much everything, but, feel free to ask, and enjoy your day. Think about comfort in your life, in your day, in whatever part of your life, and I We'll be back next week for my standard plan with me for my bullet journal. But thank you for being here. Bye.